BB for Hody and Straight Black Pride, brothers and sisters. This is your brother, DC Radical One, and you have entered the center. Shout out to our wonderful producer, Cindy Ashby. You can check us out on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, and iHeartRadio at On the Wake Up Radio. You also can check us out at onthewakeupradio.com. That's onthewakeupradio.com. You can also check out video content at otw2.com. That's otw2.com. You know what? I forgot. First of all, let me know if y'all can hear me clear. I'm going to try something new that I brought up before, add a little ambiance to this discussion. I want y'all to let me know if the music is too loud or intrusive. And we'll go from there. All right, loud and clear. Appreciate that. Excuse me, Jay Henderson. Let's see who's in the building. Brother Elijah, BB4OD and Straight Black Pride. We got another brother Elijah, BB4OD to you, brother. BB4OD and Straight Black Pride to my good brother, brother Desaline. Of course, brother, you got ripped off. Just got off the phone with him. BB4OD and Straight Black Pride to sister Vanessa. Brother Igwe, I think you missed us last week. Peace to you, brother. And I think that's everybody so far. All right, cool. So I don't know if y'all hear the music in the background. I think we'll be adding that for a little ambiance from now on in the live streams. Y'all let me know, is that too loud or not loud enough? I can hear it from my speakers, but I don't know if the sound levels are equal to what y'all have. But before I get started on today's discussion, I just want to let y'all know I am planning to start another YouTube channel separate from this one. And there are two things I want to do. One show I want to have just a discussion of brothers. Peace to Brother Crow. And then another one, I want to have a panel of, I appreciate that, Brother Elijah. And then the other one, I want to have a male-female discussion. This is something I plan to do either late May, early June. I'll let y'all know if anybody is interested in, I didn't mention Brother Kevin Austin. Peace to Brother Kevin, because actually I need to mention, because the brother just blessed the Cashapp right before the show. So if I didn't greet the brother, that was an oversight on my part. Thank you, Sister Vanessa, for letting me know. Peace and blessings to that brother. So if anybody would like to, has the time or would like to appear on either of those panels, you can hit me up on an email. And the email is running across the screen now, dc.radical_1 at protonmail.com. I have not, everything's not finalized yet. I'll let y'all know when everything is finalized. But like I said, I'm looking for late May, early June start to that. And basically my goal is to counter program. When you come on YouTube, there's just seemingly for the last almost 3-4 years now, we have these endless, monotonous, and useless discussions about male-female relationships, but they're centered in the European dynamic and the European understanding of masculinity and femininity, and thus that makes them more counterproductive than productive. And so it's been time for someone to counter program against that and, try to put the clean glass next to the dirty glass. And so that is the goal. It's one of those things that, hey, even if somebody steals the idea and other people try to take it and do the same thing, I'm with it, because that means it'll be a positive example for our community, right? So, like I said, I already got the names and all that stuff pointed out. I just won't put them out in the atmosphere because somebody will definitely steal it and then turn it into something that it's not not supposed to be. So, with that being said, today's show is one of those things. I think I talked about it last week. Greetings to Lee Clinton. It's one of those things where I talked about it last week, and I said, you know what? We haven't gone over that. Or if we have, it's been a long time. And what happens is new people come into the movement, new people check out the channel, new people check out Brother Genie, new people find out about Straight Black Pride. And even if something has been discussed, they may have missed it. And so this may be review for some. And then also, you know, we always hear this concept about the agenda. And we say this stuff, we don't realize that people actually write out documents for us to study the agenda, right? We just so used to throwing the words out, and we don't actually look, because the stuff is there. It's on the internet. It's been printed out. They wrote it up. They had a plan and program. And what happens is it feels like we just wake up one day and these things change. But that's not how the world works. How the world works is people plan stuff out. They implement their plans slowly over years. And then over a generation or two, you wake up and the world is completely different from how you remember it as a child. And that's how it works. And the reason that we should study these things is because it lets us know that if we want to plan and organize and strategize and implement those plans, even if you don't live to see them come to fruition, we can see based on studying the enemy that these things can be put into place in the world. You can change the world simply by implementing the plan. So with that being said, first, before we look at the actual document, which is up here, which is, as it says plainly, the 1972 Gay Rights Platform created at the National Coalition of Gay Organizations Convention held in Chicago, I believe February 12th, 1972. Now, this is the reprint. And then also, I believe I have, do I have the PDF up here? Let's see. Yeah, we got the PDF. Bam, there it is. Adopted February 13th, 1972 at Chicago Convention. So that is the documents that we're going to look at, right? But before we look at that, we're going to have to look at some history from before that, because I made an interesting observation. And then, I talked to Brother Genie, as y'all know, we talk a lot. And he had come to the same conclusion already. He already knew it. But I didn't know he knew it because I hadn't read the book that he had read. But when we get to it, you'll understand now. When you hear certain things, you'll see what you're really looking at. So we're going to look at, and I rarely use People's Wiki as a source, but for this we're going to look at two people. We're going to look at Magnus Hirschfeld and Henry Gerber. And we're going to look at them the way I looked at them, right? And you like, hey, fam, who are these people and why are they relevant? All right, let's look at it real quickly. Henry Gerber, right? Born Henry Joseph Dilmar in Bavaria and died, weirdly enough, here in Washington, D.C. Why am I looking him up? Because it says here, gay activist and founder of the Society for what? Human Rights. Stop right there. Why is that relevant? Because Think about what it said. He founded a society, the nation's first publicly known homosexual organization, and the first known American homosexual publication, right? But he called the Society for Human Rights in 1924. So that's before World War II. That's back during the Garvey era. And this is a German, right? Now, the thing that's interesting about it is that who influenced him? We look here, Magnus Hirschfeld, a German what? He's a German, right? We know he's a German. But a German what? A German born into an Ashkenazi Jewish family, right? And, they say he's a philosopher and all this stuff, and an outspoken advocate for quote unquote sexual minorities, and founded the Scientific Humanitarian Committee and the World League for Sexual Reform, and an early advocate for homosexuality and transgender rights. Right? Now, why is that important? Because he's really the one that took and made the human rights label. And when you hear the word human rights, and you hear the word human rights violation, and you hear the United States talk about people not keeping up their human rights, literally, when you think human rights from now on, think homosexuality. That's all human rights means. Human rights doesn't mean nothing about black people. Human rights don't mean nothing about doing the right thing. Human rights don't mean nothing about helping people. The human rights, it don't mean none of that stuff. Human rights means homosexuality. Keep that in your mind. And the reason why is very simple. To be African, the core of being African is black man, black woman, black child, right? Asar, Aset, and Hebrew. That's the core of being African. The core of being European is what the Greeks said, the highest and noblest aspiration is homosexuality. So for them, being human is being homosexual at the core. So when they're fighting for human rights, they're fighting for gay rights because they're one and the same, because the essence of the European is homosexuality. So now we have that decoded. So whenever we hear human rights, we understand what we're looking at. So are we clear on that part? Now, so let us, now that we got that clear, and we got these people that we never heard of before. And here's the thing. It's always, whenever you look up this stuff, there's always a hat somewhere that's just gonna pop out, no matter what you think, or who you think started it, or what came before it, or what. Somewhere hidden in there, there's a hat. And you're gonna look underneath it, and a hat just gonna pop up like Jack in a Box. And you're like, I should have known there was a hat here, right? So now let's look at the actual document. And what's interesting is I tried to find some type of video documentation or any type of discussion on this. I have found virtually nothing. And I would have thought for a moment that maybe the veracity of the history of this information wasn't correct until I saw the old document, the PDF, and I'm like, yeah, this is definitely. I'm like, no, this is correct. This happened. These are the notes. This looks very authentic, and no one has challenged it. So, and then of course, once you actually start reading it, you realize, yes, this is definitely authentic, because this plan has been implemented very, very thoroughly, right? So let's go look at it. Now, as you see, they have 9 points on the federal level, 9 objectives that they wanted to achieve in 1972. And then they also have, hold up, let me bring that up. They also have 8 points on the state level. So we look at point number 1, federal level. It says amend all federal civil rights acts. Amend all what acts? Amend all federal civil rights acts, other legislation, and government controls to prohibit discrimination in employment, housing, public accommodations, and public services. Now, why is that important? Because what do we always talk about? We always say, in fact, if I'm not mistaken, y'all correct me. Did Martin Luther King's daughter, I think she said it. She's like, my father didn't die for this stuff, or something to the effect. And we always talk about how they use our movement to build their movement. Well, right here, we see we weren't crazy. We were correct. Because it said amend all what? Civil rights legislation. Civil rights legislation was fought for by black people. Black people got beat over the head. Black people got shot down like dogs. Black people got ran over by cars. Black people had the houses set on fire. All that stuff for civil rights legislation. What was the big problem with that? The people who fought for the rights. Number one, the civil rights leaders we know were funded by the hats. Malcolm X told us about the Big Six in 1964, Message to the Grassroots, right? The mistake that was made was it wasn't outlined as black rights. So since it was set off as civil rights, everybody was able to come behind that and use it to build up themselves upon the platform that we had fought and died for. So now they're talking about, or they were talking about at that time, making legislation to prohibit discrimination in employment, housing, public accommodations, so forth and so on. Here's the thing. Again, one thing about black people, our uniform is self-evident, right? You see us coming a mile away. They look, you know you're black. Do I have to know that a person is homosexual unless they tell me? No. So were these things really necessary? Is there really some type of discrimination going on? I mean, only if you advertise who you are. But other than that, nobody's paying attention. Just be honest. That was always my thing. You wasn't trying to cram the stuff down people's throat, you wouldn't get the reaction that you get. But hey, that's another discussion. We're just here to look at the documentation and to study the documentation, right? So now, the average person looks at that and looks at the first one, and it seems reasonable. You're like, okay, this is America. You know, we don't want people discriminated against, yada, yada, blah, 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 right? Most black people wouldn't pay that any attention. And I understand. But my thing is, remember, it's built off your back. So what you work for, the right you work for, somebody else is getting without putting in the work. Number 2, issuance by the president of an executive order prohibiting the military from excluding, for reasons of their sexual orientation, persons who of their own volition desire entrance into the armed services, and from issuing less than fully honorable discharges for homosexuality, and the upgrading to fully honorable all such discharges previously issued with retroactive benefits. This is much bigger than we think. Do we remember, like, way back, and Not sure what age everybody is, but oh, peace of brother Dawood. See, you are here right on time. My admit, because this brother, he's military. I got a couple other brothers former military. So y'all can speak to this. This right here. Now, how many people remember, was it I think it was Clinton was in office with the don't ask, don't tell and all that stuff. We think that stuff came out of nowhere. But here, point number 2 in the gay rights platform talks about allowing them into the military and not discriminating against them in the military. So we see the argument in, I don't remember what year that was, sometime in the 90s, and the push for it then. But the plan for it was written 25 years before that, give or take, right? So these things don't come out of thin air. But of course, at the time, we didn't have access to it. We didn't see this information. Now, the question we have to ask, right? I've always asked, why would these people be so pressed to enter into the military, right? And to be recognized in the military? Well, one, it is 2 reasons. Simple reason number 1 is the military personnel in America. There's a certain prestige and respect that comes with it. So even if we see the person and let's say their white brothers would look down upon them for their sexuality, the fact that they are military, the same white brothers will give them a certain amount of respect, and white society will what? Thank them for their service. And that's what they always tell people. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service, especially in wartime, right? So it's a way to change the narrative, and it also changes the narrative of the men being weak and effeminate, because of course we never talk about the aggressive homosexual. That's a whole nother thing that we don't talk about, right? So it's a way to change their image and to curry favor and to gain favor in society, and also of course gain access to military training. Now, our first thought would be, oh, well, yeah, they want to learn to defend themselves. Sure. First of all, Europeans believe in death, domination, and destruction. Just because somebody's a homosexual don't mean they don't believe in death, domination, and destruction. So if they're getting military training, they're getting that military training to carry out death, domination, and destruction. Never forget that. Right? And said, brother, you got ripped off, said it is passed in Peace of Lord Bell. Said it was passed in 93, enacted in 94, and repealed, and Brother Dawood said repealed in 2012. Yeah, because the objective had already been achieved. So that's point number 2. And again, we're just going point by point and discussing, each point. Now notice what was interesting is on the federal level, the first point, they wanted to use the civil rights to piggyback off of, right? But then on the second point, they wanted to bypass Congress and go straight to the president and try to get an executive order. Point number 3, the same thing, another executive order. Issuance by the president of an executive order prohibiting discrimination in the federal civil service because of sexual orientation and hiring and promoting, and prohibiting discriminations against homosexuals in security clearances. Why is that important? Well, the way that you can affect policy, if you can't get those jobs, you can't affect policy. But if you can get those jobs in civil service, then you can begin to to change policy, to inject your ideas into the public discourse and alter the way people think about certain things. And Brother Dawood said service members are allowed to be openly gay now and can be discriminated against. And is that can or can't be discriminated against because of it. I know now they can be openly gay, but we see the roots of it going up from this stated objective up to the don't ask, don't tell thing now to just the open, you know, the openness of it at this point. But going back to this executive order that they want, once you open up the floodgates, you have what you have now with we have Rachel Levine, who was, what was his name? Robert Levine. But y'all know the guy I'm talking about, right? He's a like health and human services person. And then you got the nuclear dude that's underneath him that stole the woman's dress, been walking around with a black woman's dress on and all that stuff. You know, this is where that stuff started. We see this stuff now. We see these people in front of us, and we're like, man, who in the world? Where these people come from? The root of that is the 1972 gay rights platform, right? Now, point number 4. Elimination of tax inequities victimizing single persons and same-sex couples. Now, I'll be completely honest. I was not aware of any type of tax thing that, and maybe they weren't able to file under the tax as a couple because this was before the whole marriage thing and stuff like that. I'm not really sure how that works. I'm not a tax expert, nor am I a homosexual. So, you know, but hey, everybody hates taxes and everything. In fact, I think this is a weekend to pay your taxes, speaking of this stuff. But so if you're gonna make a platform, one thing you can get people to agree on is, hey, I want to pay less taxes. If you say that, I don't care what crowd you're in America, everybody's going to agree to that. No one's going to debate it. You don't have to discuss it. All you have to do is put it out there, and there it is. Your brother said can't. All right, thank you. And brother, you got ripped off. Said, remember, America closed its borders in the 1940s to keep out sexual degenerates. No, actually, I do not remember that, brother. Yeah, thanks for letting me know that. I do not remember that. So, as we go through this piece by piece, first of all, hold up. Let's look at something real quick because I didn't really look at this. All right. So we'll say number 1 we know has been achieved, right, on a federal level. Number 2 has been achieved on a federal level. Number 3 has been achieved on a federal level. I have no clue about number 4, but we'll say more than likely that's been achieved on a federal level. Number 5, elimination of bars to the entry, immigration, and naturalization of homosexual aliens, which, brother, you got ripped off just mentioned. That's been achieved. I don't know anything about, I don't know anyone that, in fact, more than likely what's going to happen is either they're going to start invading African countries for prohibiting homosexuality, or they're going to open the floodgates and we're going to see a boatload of Ugandan refugee, LGBT refugees, and some of these other countries. We're just going to see the floodgates open. So we have to be on the lookout for that, because we're going to see brothers and sisters, and we're going to think that these brothers and sisters, they from the continent, and they're going to come and they're going to talk about being Pan-African and working with all black people and stuff like that. And they're going to be the homosexuals that are accepted by the United States as the African countries say enough is enough and start pushing people out. I already see it coming. Just be on the lookout for it. Start seeing this flood of people and trying to reach out to Africans here in the West. Give it a year or so. Just be on the lookout for it. I could be wrong, but I doubt it, right? So now, number 6. And this right here is a key part of what's going on today. those of you who follow me on Instagram, um, you should have seen my post where they were where the teacher was talking about minor attracted persons. If not, you can go to my Instagram and you can check that out. BB Folding, Straight Black Pride to Spirit, Mind, Character, Soul. Ma'am, you are late. Gonna dock you $1 for being late. I'm not used to you being late. But no, in all seriousness, glad to have you here in the building. So, all right, let's look at this, because this is one we got to discuss. Federal encouragement and support for sex education courses prepared and taught by gay women and men, presenting homosexuality as a valid, healthy preference and lifestyle as a viable alternative to heterosexuality. Let's stop right there. It says preference. If you prefer something, that means you put that over something else. Well, there's only two things on the table. It's homosexuality and it's straight. They saying that they want the government to support sex educations taught by homosexuals, promoting homosexuality to straight children. Point number 6. And my 5% brothers, y'all tell me the meaning of the number 6, right? Now, we know for a fact we don't have to discuss at all whether or not this has been implemented, because this is the fight that is going on now. I didn't even think to bring up videos showing the different fights in different parts of the country where people are fighting against this stuff, because I was like, we're just going to go through the document and we're not going to deal with video and stuff like that. I just wanted it to be a quick but thorough discussion. But this part right here is the key, right? I remember I went to a lecture at PKB and Brother Kush was speaking. And he quoted, I can't remember who he quoted, but he said that they said that homosexuals don't create children, they recruit your children, right? Point number 6 goes directly to that. We're trying to figure out why they're teaching this stuff in the schools. How does this stuff benefit the children? Why can't they teach the children to read? The children can't read and this and that. The children can barely add and subtract. The children can't write cursive. What is going on? And we've been trying to figure this stuff out. Why are they presenting this stuff? Why do they have these filthy books in the library is teaching? I mean, stuff that I've seen and is sent to me that I don't post anywhere because it's so, I mean, it's so degenerate. It looks like you advocating something that you're against, but you're trying to show people what's going on. So you got to weigh in the balance. You're like, all right, what's the least worst thing I can show people? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's the least horrible thing I can show people to scare them into action? Like, oh my God, this was going on, right? But it's, I mean, this is the root of it. This is where it started. And I mean, it is so, oh man, it's so frustrating that we have parents out here who are unaware of what's going on. We got teachers that's covering up for people because they're scared for their job. And the children are just at the mercy of the merciless. Because again, these people planned 50 years ago, right? That's been over 50 years ago. They planned this out to attack the minds of our children. And Brother Crow's talking about Julius Malema. Hey, thank you for reminding me, brother. And small tangent. Um, Tomorrow, yeah, because I should have it edited and everything. Tomorrow, I'll be releasing a radical report on Julius Malema's secret funder. So look out for that tomorrow at probably 8 o'clock. So to me, this is the biggest one right here because once people get the minds of your children, you're no threat because they already have the next generation that you've produced. And so we have no doubt that that's being implemented and they're working on it. Excuse me. And they've been effective, unfortunately. Now it says 7, appropriate executive orders, regulations, and legislation banning the compiling, maintenance, and dissemination of information on an individual's sexual preference, behavior, and social political activities for dossiers and databases. What's interesting about this is when I started thinking about it, I'm like, for them to say that they're banning this means that the government has already been surveilling people, right? So I started thinking about it. I was like, that's interesting. Now we know that Gay Edgar Hoover, ironically enough, was surveilling people and digging into people's personal lives because of his own, proclivities. But this let us know that the type of surveillance that we just kind of actually used to today because of social media and stuff like that has been going on for a long time. And to me, that's the importance of this one. It just points that out. But I just found it interesting when I saw that. I was like, because they were talking about data banks in 1972. Me personally, I don't really think about keeping data banks full of information on people at that time. Brother Patrick, peace and black power. Straight black pride, brother. Good to see you. Haven't seen you in a while. I don't know if you saw last week's show, but if you get a chance, check out last week's show. So that is interesting. And we are almost, we're at number 8. So we're almost finished at the federal level. And number 8, federal funding of aid programs of gay men's and women's organizations designed to alleviate the problems encountered by gay women and men, which are engendered by an oppressive, sexist society. Here's the interesting part about that. They claim that the society is sexist and oppressive to homosexual men and women. And this is something that if you pay attention, is always a connection that's being made between feminism and homosexuality. And it's intertwined in a way that if you're not really paying attention, you don't really notice. But if you are paying attention, you always notice it. In fact, in tomorrow's video, I talked about that as well. Now, here's what's interesting, right? Black people in America have by far have encountered more problems than any other people in America, other than the people who inhabited the place before the Europeans got here, right? Is there any federal program aiding pro-black organizations? And I'm asking, federal programs aiding pro-black organizations that are dedicated strictly to alleviating the problems encountered by black people. Y'all let me know in the chat if there is such a program or grants or stuff from the government. Let me know, because I think that's interesting that they would ask for that. I'm like, hold up, do we get that? Have we asked for that? Like, would the government give us that money? Like, for example, would the government give Straight Black Pride money to help rebuild the black family. Did anybody think that would happen? Because I don't think so. But I just find that interesting that they actually plan to get government funding for their organizations to solve whatever special problems that they felt like they had. And then, last but not least, on the federal level, immediate release of all gay women and men now incarcerated in detention centers, prisons, and mental institutions because of sexual offense charges related to victimless crimes or sexual orientation, and that adequate compensation be made for the physical and mental duress encountered, and that all existing records related to their incarceration be immediately expunged. Now, here's the thing. Again, as a black person, I'm like, no one has been more incarcerated for crimes that we have not committed. No one has been more brutalized in the penal system than black people. And I'm gonna be honest, I really like anybody else, any other group of people crying about any type of oppression via incarceration, yada yada, blah blah blah. Man, I ain't trying to hear none of that. I'm just being honest. I don't care. Like, was that happening in the 70s? Maybe it was. Maybe it was. I have no idea. But when they talk about victimless crimes, I'm like, victimless crimes? What victimless crimes would those be? I mean, black people go to jail for walking down the street, breathing, getting shot up and everything like that. I saw something today, or yesterday actually. It was so interesting because I was like, oh, now white people will get it if they see this story. The police went to the wrong house. I don't even know where this was, what city or whatever, but the police went to the wrong house. So they go knocking on the man's door in the middle of the night. The man opens the door. He has a firearm, and 3 cops empty the clip on him. He's dead, and now they got to explain how they went to the wrong house. They even asked each other the address, and then knocked on the door, and then killed the man. And I was just laughing because I'm like, now y'all know how it feels. His man sleep, somebody banging on his door. He like, oh my God, somebody trying to break in, and they let him have it. You know, I mean, that stuff happens to black people all the time. So this time it happened to a white man. You know, he there with his family. He think he said his wife and daughter were there and whatnot. And white people got to see the irony of it because they're calling the police, not realizing that the police is the ones that had shot their father. They just heard gunshots. He'd been killed by the police, and you got to call the police to come and do something about the police killing you. You know what I'm saying? Like, now they get to see the irony of how ridiculous this stuff is and how this system works. So when other people complain about the system, I'm like, hey, welcome to Black World. You're a little late. You know what I'm saying? So I just found that interesting, and I had to take that tangent, that side note. And Brother Dawood said, it's like the alphabets have completely hijacked the black civil rights agenda for the last 50 years. Exactly. They jumped on the back of it, they rolled it into the ground and leaped forward. And then, of course, Mr. Barack Hussein Obama, or Barack Insane Obama, however you want to look at it, made sure to project it forward as far as he could, right? So that was the federal level of the platform. Now, and they were thorough because they had set up for the federal level, and then they had objectives for the state level. Now let's look at the state level. And looking at the state level is very important because just like point number 6 was very important, right? And we see the effects of it now. When we get down to, I believe it's number 7 here, we're going to see something very interesting. All right, state level. It says, point number 1, all federal legislation and programs enumerated in demands 1, 6, 7, 8 and 9 should be implemented at the state level where applicable. Let's go back and look at what those were. Number 1, civil rights legislation. Number 6, federal encouragement and support of sexual education courses prepared and taught by gay men and women presenting homosexuality as valid. That's point number 6. So they want to implement sex education on a federal level for homosexuality, sex education on a state level for homosexuality, right? Point number 7, executive orders dealing with compiling information. They want to do that on a state level. Point number 8, on the state level. Now, not only on the federal level, on the state level, they want federal aid and state aid to gay, women's, and men's organizations. So money to help them push their agenda, right? And then number 9, in release of incarcerated people on the state level. So that's number 1. So they just want to take those points from the federal level to the state level. Point number 2, repeal of all state laws prohibiting private sexual acts involving consenting persons, equalizing for homosexuals and heterosexuals for the enforcement of all laws. I'm going to tell you why that's dangerous. I'm going to read that one again. And brother, you got ripped off. Said, don't forget the San Francisco Gay Choir was made up of many registered sex offenders. BB488 to a BB488 man stepping in a little late. Hey, brother, it's so interesting that you bring that up because I made a video about that. I showed it to everybody and everything. And then they made sure to have that taken down and give everyone a copyright strike who put that up. But they claimed, if you remember, that it was satire and that they were just joking. But if you were just joking, then why you don't want people to see the video? Again, right? But back here, the reason that this is dangerous, because we're going to read it again. It says repeal of all state laws prohibiting private sexual acts involving consenting persons. Stop right there. I want y'all to think about what that says. I'm going to have a drink of water real quick, but I want y'all to think about how that is written and what it really says real quick. It says consenting persons. What part is missing from this equation that would make sense for it to be there? Because it says consenting persons. What's the word that's missing? Anybody know? Person could be anybody, right? There it is. Jay Henderson opens the door for pedophilia. It does not say consenting adults. It says consenting persons. I mean, it's right there well, it's not black and white because the way this is colored. But anyway, sure, when they wrote it, it was in black and white. It's right there. It does not say adults. It says consenting persons. Let's read it again. Make sure that my eyes are working, right? State level. Point number 2, repeal of all state laws prohibiting private sexual acts involving consenting persons and the equalization for homosexuals and heterosexuals for the enforcement of all laws. What did the European always tell us? The devil is in the details. And I say, no, the devil writes the details. You know what I'm saying? It's not that the devil's in the details. The devil writes the details. So it says consenting persons. I mean, it's right there. This is point number 2 on the state level. And we're going to have even more assurance of what I said is correct when we get to point number 7. Now, point number 3, repeal all state laws prohibiting solicitation for private voluntary sexual liaisons and laws prohibiting prostitution, both male and female. Now, the question should be, why exactly would they be interested in that? Well, here's the reason. Being completely honest. If a child, greetings to Unique One Express, good to have you in the building. If a child comes from a messed up family life, right? And they find themselves out on the street, what is one of the things that they often engage in? They often engage in selling themselves for survival. Now, on the surface, it seems like, yeah, it's a good thing. You don't want to criminalize these young people that are in these situations and so forth and so on. But once you encourage it, who are the people that benefit from it? Because it says what? All laws prohibiting prostitution, both male and female. Well, who's the only people that's interested in prostitution of males? Homosexual pedophile. Only a grown adult male would write that, take this off the table. So we can have this, which opens up again for prostitution of children. Because there's no, let's read this again to make sure I'm not tripping. Is there any age limitation put upon this? No, it says voluntary sexual liaisons. Yeah, it says repeat. We're going to read it again to make sure I'm not tripping. Repeat of all state laws prohibiting solicitation for private voluntary sexual liaisons and laws prohibiting prostitution, both male and female. So what it's saying is, if it's voluntary and there's money involved, let's remove those laws. But it doesn't say voluntary sexual liaisons between adults. It just says voluntary sexual liaisons. Again, the devil writes the details. There's nothing here in this objective to protect children or to say children shouldn't be involved in this activity. It just says, hey, as long as it's voluntary, we should repeal the laws against it, which is a backdoor way of getting people, i.e. children, into prostitution. And brother, you got ripped off says, have we not seen kidnapped black girls killed their abductor and the victim now becomes a suspect? Yeah, we've seen that multiple times. We saw that with the first big case I saw was the little mixed girl who I thought was black at the time, but I should have known because there was actually a European female advocating for her, and that was on Twitter about 10 years ago. And then there's a sister, I don't know whatever happened to her case. I forgot the information, but the sister that she killed her abductor and they were trying to throw the book at her. And I think that was like a couple of years ago, like right before the pandemic. So yeah, brother, we see that all the time. So again, if we look underneath the surface, we see a lot of this stuff opens the gates for pedophilia. Now, where was I at? Oh, number 3, right? Oh no, I did number 3. Number 4, enactment of legislation prohibiting insurance companies and any other state-regulated enterprise from discriminating because of sexual orientation and insurance and bonding of any prerequisite to employment or control of one's personal. All right, I'm not familiar with this word. I wonder, is that spelled right? Does anybody know what this word is? It's DEMESNE. I've never seen this word before in my life. I'm not going to embarrass myself trying to pronounce a word that I've never seen before in my life. Now, let's go back. It says enactment of legislation prohibiting insurance companies and other state-regulated enterprises from discriminating because of sexual orientation in insurance and in bonding or any other prerequisite to employment. Okay. On the surface, that seems reasonable that people would fight for that. You want to be able to, because basically, this is a like to me, this is a pre um like setting up for recognizing of people's marriages, which at that time were not legalized. So you have insurance out on the person. The person has life insurance, and they want to pay out their homosexual lover and things like that. I mean, you know, that's a pre-work. That's like the what's the word I'm looking for? But that's setting up to for that to be normalized. Let's see. We got somebody else new in the building. The Neil Davis Straight Black Pride. You say these details are not meant to be scrutinized. Well, we're scrutinizing them today. So, hey, it is what it is. I guess we're doing what we're not supposed to be doing, right? So, now, number 5. And here we go again. Here we go again. Dealing with children, right? You can see when you get to the state part, you realize how many things are dealing with children, and you really get to the core of it. It says enactment of legislation so that child custody, adoption, visitation rights, foster parenting, and the like shall not be denied because of sexual orientation or marital status. Okay, now we have so many examples of how this goes wrong, right? You had the lesbian couple that drove the children off the cliff, where the little boy ran up and hugged the police, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, he's giving out hugs. He's so great." Blah 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 blah. That child was asking for help. We got the whole Gabrielle Union fiasco. We got the whole Madonna fiasco. We got the whole Charlize Theron fiasco. Is there any other people that I missed that we see that when they get their hands on, and we got the 2 white men that were violating children, and they caught them two homosexual couple or whatever a couple of months back. So we've seen the outcome of the implementation of this point number here. We have to ask ourselves, like, this is just basic logic. We don't have to ask ourselves here, but the public should have asked themselves this. Why are people who aren't interested in doing the acts that produce people or produce children so interested in adopting children? Why are they interested in custody? You're not doing anything that produces children when you don't have to worry about custody because you ain't doing nothing. Right? Why are they so interested in adopting children? Why are they so interested in having children around? Why are they so interested in teaching children? But you don't want to do the things that produce children. You hate the act that produces children. That you dedicate your life to fighting against the act that produces children. But at the same time, you want to have child custody, visitation rights, foster parenting, and adoption of children. I mean, to me, the answer is obvious. The answer speaks for itself. The only people that don't have children that are interested in children all the time, or generally speaking, those people turn out to be pedophiles. And this has opened up the door for all types of pedophilic acts taking place. And we see the stories, and we see the pushing of the homophile agenda, and we see them turning our sons into their daughters all over the place. And it started here in 1972. Well, it probably started before that, but y'all understand what I'm saying. It was outlined here in 1972 in point number 5 on the state level. And let's see, brother BB Fahody, man, he's gonna help me improve my vocabulary. Brother says, The word is land that is attached to a manor. It is accompanied in the house, sale, and or transfer. Ah, okay, transfer of property. All right, cool. Appreciate that, good brother. Y'all, I'm gonna tell y'all the truth. That brother's vocabulary is quite expansive. You know what I'm saying? He's an outstanding scholar in his own right, if y'all only knew. Now, we are coming up on toward the end. Number 6. Repeal. Well, I mean, this is done. Repeal of all state laws prohibiting transvestism and cross-dressing. I mean, again, they started with that, and now you got Drag Queen Story out. So something that seems relatively innocuous and something that they were doing behind closed doors anyway. Rudolph Giuliani is a picture of him. He used to dress up, do cross-dress every year. And there's a picture of him and Trump in New York, and Trump looking at him like, here this fool go with that stuff. Right? Have y'all seen that picture? But anyway, that's when he was the governor of New York. He got him with a full dress on, and didn't Epstein have a picture? Bro, you got ripped off. Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't Epstein have a picture of a portrait of Bill Clinton with a dress on, like hanging up over his mantle or whatever? I mean, so you got high level government officials that's been cross-dressing. So, hey, that's no surprise. That was easy for them to pass that because they already had people in their corner. And number 7, right? Let me see. Hold on. Do I want to make sure y'all can see this. I wish I could underline this. Point number 7 says repeal of all laws at the state level governing the age of sexual consent. I'm gonna stop right there. I'm just gonna stop right there. If anybody wanted to know the importance of studying this information, Brother Patrick said Giuliani was the mayor of New York City, not the governor. Thank you, brother. Thank you for correcting me. I knew he was the mayor, but I thought he had went from the mayor to the governor, but obviously not. But hey, that's bad enough as is. Now, we don't have to discuss this long, but let's just state the obvious. Who are the only people who would be interested in repealing all laws governing the age of sexual consent? I'm gonna wait for y'all to let me know in the chat, while I'm just gonna drink some more water. And in fact, I'm gonna read that again and again. State level objective number 7: repeal of all state laws governing the age of sexual consent. All of them. You know what I'm saying? Not some of them. All of them. Let's see. And Neil Davis said that Ed Koch was a full-blown homosexual mayor of New York during the late 80s and early 90s. You know, I always thought that, but I wasn't sure about Koch. But he's Ed Koch. The name speaks for itself, so we're not surprised. Unique One Express said, ye old pedos. Now, Sante 1000 says, there it is right there, right? We don't have to make stuff up. We ain't got to look and see no conspiracy theory. We ain't got to debate or argue. We ain't got to say nothing. So if anybody says, well, the agenda is not connected, it's just for rights, it's not connected to pedophilia, I'm going to say, well, you need to go back to 1972 and tell them that, and tell them not to write it, but they done already wrote it down. And since you don't have a time machine, we got the documentation. Ain't nothing else for us to talk about. Point number 7, the divine number, the God number, Their God is pedophilia. Plain and simple, right there. In black and white, especially the white part. And last but not least, repeal of all legislative provisions that restrict the sex or number, not and, of persons entering into a marriage unit, and the extension of legal benefits to all persons who cohabitate, regardless of sex or numbers. Now, this is interesting. So, looking at that, it kind of says that they're willing to even push the whole polygamy argument to get into the type of sexual formations that they want to get into. So they'll take something that could possibly be positive depending on how you do it, and they just want to make it a free-for-all of just complete debauchery. Because again, it says repeal all legislation provisions that restrict the sex or number of persons entering a marriage unit. Now, what's interesting is that what's right over that? Repeal of laws of age consent. And then it says number of persons. So literally, if you read these two things together and they're enumerated right after the other, if you implemented those two laws, you could have a society where a grown man could be married to 6 to 7 children. Right? Because point number 7 is repealing of all laws governing the age of consent. Point number 8 is repealing of all legislative provisions that restrict the number of persons entering into a marriage unit, and the extension of legal benefits to all persons who cohabitate, regardless of sex or number of people. So a man could if you implement these two laws, a man, for example, or a woman, or people that use them various different identities and don't know what they are, could literally have a harem of children based upon the implementation of those two laws. Now, what I didn't do here is I did not, and I guess it depends on the state. If we look at the state level, I would say that number 1 has been achieved. Number 2 has been achieved. Number 3, no. Number 4, I believe, has been achieved. Number 5 has been achieved in most states. Number 6 has been achieved. This means that on a state level, the only objectives that they have that have not been achieved are number 7 and number 8. And I believe that we have said that the majority at the federal level have already been achieved. So, brothers and sisters, now if we just want to look at the world that we are in and how we got here, this document gives us literally the blueprint for the world that we're currently in. So we don't have to debate now. We don't have to debate anyone that says there's no agenda. You guys are conspiracy theorists. You're making this stuff up. You're paranoid. You're a thisophobe, thatophobe, and so forth and so on. I'm going to steal a line from another YouTube channel that talks about boxing. Documentation beats conversation. Right? Here we got the documentation, so we don't have the conversation. And Jay Henderson says some of these devils are now claiming they're trans age. And see, you're trans age. You're not a pedophile because you identify as a child, and now you're with a child. Although, to sane people, 2 children should not be engaging in those activities. That is a problem as well, right? But yeah, I've seen this stuff, and it's complete insanity. And we've seen, because so many of these things have been enacted, we see the ramifications of enacting and allowing this stuff in the floodgates and how it opens up everything else. And brother, you got ripped off says maybe you should follow this program up with the homosexual manifesto and the 1993 gay rights march on Washington. That's a good idea. I don't think I have that though. I don't think I have that manifesto. So if you got a copy of that, brother, you can email that to me. But the 1993 march, I believe that's where they were yelling, they're young, they're queer, they're gonna rule the world, and your sons aren't safe, and all that type of stuff. I believe that was that event. And Brother Dessalines says, many brothers and sisters, I showed this to say it's a conspiracy theory. It really upsets and frustrates me. Had to leave a group chat because the dude kept trying to post pics and BS to cover it. Brother, I'm gonna be honest. I don't know how many people that we get into these debates with are low-key homosexual, but there's definitely a lot of they both in Baba Olatunji's book. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, I got Baba Olatunji's book. Obviously, I don't have to say it now. It's obvious. I never got a chance to read it, but because I have not been up on my reading as much as I should. But okay, I can check it out in there. And Daniil says the white supremacists make plans decades ahead of what we are prepared to react to. Oh yeah, no question. And the thing about this is all hats. See, here's one thing that we don't really take into account, right? The hat is the smartest of the Euros, because the hats were really the ones to live amongst us and study our culture as a group, as opposed to the Greeks. There was a Greek here, a Greek there, and then over time that relationship developed. But the hats were there. They were invaders, and they lived amongst us for a longer period of time and got to break down our culture and reshape it and remold it in their image. Brother Patrick says several of these pedophiles have claimed to identify the child in their court cases of violating children. I think I saw one, but I didn't know that was a regular thing. But that makes sense. I didn't. Yeah, that should have been obvious to me, but I hadn't seen it. And Bibi Fahodier man says the regulations of the number of marital partners speaks to what Baba Rudy has always said. Homophilia is not about love. It's about slacking carnal thirst, inundating oneself with numerous partners. Right. And yeah, and I mean, we saw that in the I guess it was the 80s, where these various diseases would break out amongst their community, and because people were just because there was no bounds, the degeneracy was unchecked, and they were just doing it in literally wherever, with whomever. And what's taking place is that aspect of homosexual culture has injected itself into mainstream culture. And one of the reasons why it's so hard for black men and black women to get along is because the women have become indeed, brother, they're descendants of the Hyksos. The ones we see now inherited that culture. It was brought to them, and then some of them are descendants of the people that were there. Um, what was I saying? Oh, that aspect of the hypersexuality has been injected into the society, and one of the reasons why we have that we have the problem between men and women is because the free for all nature of it has infected the women, and now the men have kind of backed away from it. Like, hold up, I don't really like this. You know what I'm saying? It's not as beneficial as it was. It's all well and good when you just out here and you doing your thing. You trying to, let's just be honest. You trying to smash as many women as you can get to. But when you get to the point where you start looking for wives, now you're mad because the women have adopted the same mentality as the men, and really the woman's unbridled sexual appetite is part of the masculinization of women that we don't talk about. We talk about the feminization, we talk about the masculinization in certain aspects, but we don't talk about it as far as the hypersexualization of the woman, where the women are trying to approach their sexual appetite like men. And we, of course, don't think about it as an outgrowth of the homosexual culture of the free for all, do what thou will, right? Yeah, indeed, waps and wives. In fact, I need to thank you for reminding me, brother. I need to go back and put that clip up of that with some visuals, so people can see it spelled out. Cause I didn't realize I ain't have any visuals when I did that. So anybody ever seen that? I think that was actually an excellent discussion back in the day. BB4ODA2 7779311. Good to see you coming to the building. So what? Let's see. So that's on. You got ripped off. That's in Baba's book, because I got Baba's book. In fact, I got it in the other room. I just need to read the book, or at least read that section of the book. So yeah, we can go over that in the future. But my question to you all is, if y'all had to give a percentage based upon what we read and studied and dissected here, what percentage of their plan, quote unquote, the agenda that people don't think is real, what percentage of the agenda would y'all say has been completed thus far? And my next question is there anything that we read that we think won't happen within the next 4 or 5 years? Like, is there anything on here we think absolutely, definitely won't happen? And I just want to see what y'all think, because when I looked at it, I was like, yeah, they have accomplished almost every goal. And 50 years is a long time. But this stuff is going on, and we haven't. I don't think till Brother Genie really started talking about it. I never heard anybody else talk about it at all. And what I realized, like I said before, you have to review. just because you learn something, you have to review. And I don't know how many people did the poll, because I didn't actually check the poll, so I don't know how many people, what the percentages were of people that were familiar with this information before and people that had read it before. But now we have all read it together, and now we can take and present this information to other people. And now you have a resource where you can say, hey, just watch this. It's less than 2 hours. And then we can discuss it later, because it's obvious you don't know what you're talking about. And I'm not going to argue with you. I'm just going to send you this link. You can watch it or you're not, but we're not going to have an argument because you don't know what you're talking about. Plain and simple. You said about 15 people did the poll. Okay, so anyone who is watching the show that hasn't done the poll, you should be able to show up in your YouTube feed. You should find it. and just check out that poll that deals with this subject and let me know. Of course, now your answers are going to be different because, of course, now you have read it and you are familiar with it and do know what it's about. And hold on, what do you say, brother? Have I heard about Billy? Yeah. You know what's crazy about that is that Billy Porter is probably the only person who's more lascivious than James Baldwin that they could get to play James Baldwin. Yeah, that's the part that's hilarious. Like, he's the only person. He is even more gay than James Baldwin. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I think it's, whatever. It's an appropriate casting. Why not? I'm certainly not no James Baldwin fan. So whatever he does with it, is Tyler Perry directed it, by the way, brother? Because that would be appropriate. Tyler Perry directed James and Billy Porter be in it, and they can have a whole good old trans rainbow affair and have a good old time with it. Lee, you say where is the poll? I think if you go to my YouTube page, you'll see the poll. Yeah, worst is coming to worst, you can go to my YouTube page afterwards and you should see it. Brother Patrick said the gay community already has access to children. The Democrats make sure of that. The Democrats continue to make laws that don't punish pedophilia. Hey, can't argue with that. I mean, well, first of all, how can there's no way that they can make any laws against it, because Mr. Biden's daughter said that when he's a grown man, she's a little girl, they were taking showers together. So, and not when she was like a baby. She's old enough to remember it. So that's what else can we say? She basically not publicly, but she basically accused her father of pedophilia, and the information is out there. And if we didn't say should be directed by Lee Daniels, okay, Lee Daniels can direct it and Tyler Perry can produce it. All right, we got the whole thing wrapped up. But yeah, his daughter has basically called him a pedophile. The information has come out. Nobody's covered it. Even if we thought it was ridiculous, we look and see him sniffing children, all types of weird behavior, right? So how can the Democrats write any laws against something when the head Democrat, the president of the United States, is obviously a pedophile? He ain't made no announcement, but you ain't got to make no announcement. You just got to pay attention. It's just like the Dalai Lama. If we had any questions about him being a pedophile, he cleared that up for us. Next, you got to catch the Pope doing something. You know what I'm saying? Because these people, they all exposing it now, so bring it all out. And Brother Dawood said 70% of the agenda is achieve all the stuff with the legalization of prostitution and removing the age of consent will lead to open, legal, human Hold up, bro. You know what? I got to put that on screen. Because that's... Let's read this together, brothers and sisters. 70% of the agenda achieve all the stuff with the legalization of prostitution and removing the age of consent will lead to open, legal, human trafficking. If that doesn't make people want to stand up, organize, and do something about this stuff, I don't know what else to say. Like, are we gonna... I mean, I don't know if y'all seen this, and I got to get more information, so I need to do a radical report on this. CPS has been taking Black people's children because they're having their children at home or some random other reason. I think I've seen this. I mean, I don't know what span of time, but I think I've seen this. I just saw somebody post it a couple of weeks ago, and it's like the third couple. At first, I thought it was the same couple. This is a totally different couple in a totally different place. This is starting to become a more of a normalized thing. And I don't know if this is something that was going on before and we weren't hearing about it, but this is something we're gonna have to it's something we're gonna have to organize against, because that child quote unquote protective services, there was a European female that was talking about how filthy they are, and then she had a mysterious accident. I think she accidentally walked in front of some bullets, if I'm not mistaken. Um, so again, this assault now has reached the point where they open up both barrels on children. And the thing about it is, the hat is so vicious and so wicked that they're willing to. We already know they willing to do whatever to black children, but black, white, Hispanic, Chinese, they don't care, because they have exploited some of their own children in Hollywood, so they really don't care. Nancy Schaefer, right. Nancy Schaefer. So these people, they totally out of control. And again, y'all know I always love to quote Dr. Khaled Abdul Muhammad in this situation. We must, not them, we must resist to exist. Because when I was growing up, they always used to say the children are the future, and just made it like we had to do big things. Little did I know that the big thing that I would have to do was fight against evil like a superhero. But I ain't got no superpowers other than a super brain. You know what I'm saying? That's it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to use your super brain to out scheme and outwit the super evil that's out in the world. Good luck, young man. Have at it, right? But it's the job that we have. It's what we have to do. And let me say this real quick, because I meant to say this. Yeah, brother, you got ripped off. Yeah. One of the things, and I'm gonna talk about this one day, the importance of, I talked about it a little bit in a lecture, the female dating, and specifically the black woman dating criteria. The importance of it is, she determines who reproduces, and based upon that will determine what percentage of children will be protected. Because there's a certain type of man that doesn't, the protection of his children doesn't mean as much to him as a different type of man. A type of man that wants to reproduce in order to produce children for a purpose, like fighting evil, is going to react differently to these types of things and will help organize the stuff than the type of man that haphazardly creating children with 5, 6, 7 random people that he can't keep up with anyway. So when something happens, he's not there. That's why when we were seeing our people being shot down, and we're looking around like, where are the angry fathers? The angry fathers weren't there because of the mate selection process that had taken place before that. You see what I'm saying? But that's a deeper discussion I'm not going to go into, because we're primarily focused here just on the agenda that they told us didn't really exist. That now we've studied the documentation and seen that indeed the agenda did exist and has for the last 50 years. So, with that, brothers and sisters, I'm going to close out relatively early. Be on the lookout. And I probably won't be able to join y'all, but be on the lookout for the Julius Malema video tomorrow at 8 o'clock. It's about a little more than a half hour long. Be sure to check that out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Tell your friends. Tell your enemies. You know what I'm saying? Make sure that you hit the subscribe button, because YouTube will unsubscribe you. And make sure you hit the notifications button for all, because that's the only way that you will know that I am on beforehand. And by the way, I forgot to mention this, but I still have a community strike. So you never know. But right now, I'm planning to upload that video for tomorrow. Also, Brother You Got Ripped Off says, don't forget to listen to Brother Genie tomorrow at 10 a.m. He says 9 a.m. Central Time, but 10 a.m. Eastern Time on Sankofa Revolutionary Radio. So with that, brothers and sisters, and Brother BB Fodi, man, of course, he asked me a question right at the end, says, will Rizal Islam be a topic of discussion within the Malema video? Nope. I stick pretty much with the EFF on that one. If I do something regarding Rizal Islam, that will be a separate video, which I hadn't thought about, but I'll wait and see what moves he makes before I do that. Y'all know how I am. But again, I appreciate everyone. Again, shout out to Brother Kevin for blessing the Cash App before the show. And with that, I'll say a BB for Hodie and straight black pride.